Section 2.1.1: What DevOps is and what it is not. Let's begin with the part that people misunderstand most. When development and operations, DevOps, comes up, many people immediately look for something concrete: a tool, a platform, a job title. Something you can buy, something you can install, something you can hire for. And that instinct, more than anything else, is where the confusion starts. DevOps is not a tool, and it is not a job title. It is a way organizations think, communicate, and operate so they can deliver software faster, safer, and with higher quality. At its core, DevOps is about people working together. Tools matter, but they come second. You cannot install DevOps like software. There is no setup wizard for it. You create DevOps by changing how people work together, how responsibility is shared, and how information flows inside the organization. This is why beginners often assume DevOps is mainly about adopting new automation tools. And this is why many early attempts fail. Again and again, industry experience shows the same thing. Successful DevOps transformations start with cultural change, not with tool purchases. For decades, companies built software in a very familiar way. Developers wrote the code, operations teams ran the systems, and the handoff between them was often abrupt and fragile, like throwing a grenade over a wall and hoping it wouldn't explode on your side. The outcome was predictable. Delays became normal. Outages were frequent. Failures triggered blame instead of learning. Frustration accumulated, and eventually, burnout followed. DevOps exists so that development and operations act as one system, not as two isolated groups protecting their own territory. That is why DevOps is fundamentally a cultural movement, not a tool set. It emerged from real-world pain: slow release cycles, broken communication, and systems that stopped scaling under traditional ways of working. Once you see DevOps through that lens, it becomes easier to understand how software delivery actually behaves. It is not a straight line with a clear finish. It behaves much more like a loop, one that never truly ends. You make a decision, you change the system, and the system answers back. That answer is what matters. In practice, this loop looks simple. You plan the work, you write code, you build it, you test it, you release it, you deploy it, you operate the system, you observe how it behaves. And then something important happens. What you observe feeds directly into the next decision. Over time, this loop tightens. Feedback arrives sooner. Problems become smaller. Learning becomes continuous. This is not a theoretical idea. It is how high-performing organizations actually work, including companies like Netflix, Amazon, Spotify, and Etsy. At the center of this loop is feedback. Fast feedback turns speed into quality. When issues are discovered early, they are easier to understand and cheaper to fix. When feedback is slow, mistakes repeat themselves and grow larger over time. If you strip DevOps down to its essence, a few ideas keep returning. Responsibility is shared across the entire lifecycle instead of being handed off at deployment. Feedback is fast, so mistakes are corrected while they are still small. Improvement is continuous, not something that happens once a year. Automation is used carefully to remove repetitive work, not to replace thinking. Collaboration is built on communication and empathy. And failure is treated as information, not as a reason for blame. In short, DevOps is about creating flow. Information flows to the right people. Feedback flows back into decisions. Value flows continuously to users. DevOps does not replace Agile. Agile improved how development teams work internally. DevOps extends those same ideas to operations and security, so quality and compliance are part of the process from the start, not something added later under pressure. When organizations truly work this way, the results are visible. High-performing DevOps teams deploy many times per day. Low-performing teams deploy only a few times per year. Elite organizations recover from failures dramatically faster. They experience fewer outages, less downtime, and just as important, the people on those teams are less burned out and more satisfied with their work. That is the societal value of development and operations. One practical way to describe this mindset, especially in interviews, is through a simple framework called CALMS. The name is intentional. It suggests stability and control in complex systems. Culture comes first, shared goals, trust, learning without blame. Automation comes next, not for speed alone, but for consistency and reliability. Lean thinking follows, removing waste, shortening cycles, keeping systems simple. Measurement keeps decisions grounded. Data replaces assumptions. And finally, sharing ensures that knowledge spreads instead of getting trapped inside teams. When someone explains DevOps through comms, it sounds mature because it reflects how strong systems are actually built. Many organizations struggle with DevOps because they misunderstand what it is not. DevOps is not buying Kubernetes. It is not just running Docker. It is not hiring a separate DevOps team and isolating them from everyone else. It is not automating everything blindly. It is not ignoring security until production. And it is not a one-size-fits-all formula. When companies treat DevOps as a tool we bought or a role we hired, they fail. Not sometimes, often, creating a standalone DevOps team frequently backfires for the same reason. The wall does not disappear, it simply moves. Developers stop handing code to operations and start handing it to DevOps engineers instead. The silos remain. Learning stays slow. Real DevOps becomes easiest to understand when you see it in practice. At Netflix, engineers deploy constantly and fully own what they build. Failure is expected, and chaos engineering tests how systems behave under stress. Amazon approaches DevOps through autonomy. Small teams work under a simple rule. You build it, you run it. This keeps responsibility close to the code. Etsy focuses on learning. A blameless culture and strong knowledge sharing allow new engineers to deploy on their first day. Spotify organizes around collaboration. Squads give teams autonomy, while guilds spread knowledge across the organization. These are not stories about tools. They are stories about culture. When DevOps fails, the pattern is just as clear. Companies adopt modern platforms but keep old habits. They automate deployments but forget monitoring. They create DevOps centers that add new silos instead of removing old ones. These are not failures of DevOps. They are failures to understand DevOps. Cloud and DevOps naturally reinforce each other. Cloud provides elasticity, automation, and infrastructure as code. DevOps provides a safe and iterative way to use all of that reliably. Cloud without DevOps becomes chaos. DevOps without cloud becomes limited. Together, they create speed and reliability. If you are preparing for interviews, you will hear the same DevOps questions almost everywhere. Explain DevOps in your own words. Why do DevOps transformations fail? What is the role of culture? What problems does DevOps solve? Is DevOps a tool or a job title? Strong answers always return to the same core ideas: collaboration, shared ownership, automation of repetitive work, and fast feedback across the entire lifecycle. DevOps is not magic. It is a discipline, a mindset, a culture. It is a movement toward faster learning, smarter decisions, and better systems. And in the end, it does not just help teams build better software. It helps them build better teams. And now that the picture is clear, what DevOps really is and what it is not, one question naturally remains. Why did this way of working become necessary in the first place? What exactly broke in the old model? What pressures made DevOps inevitable? And which real concrete problems it was created to solve? That's where we go next. Let's talk about why DevOps exists. End of section 2.1.1.